Reason becomes fragile the moment it forgets that clarity is not the same as truth. Welcome to another story in the series From Wonder to Power, The Journey of Thought. Today, I want to show you how Bonaventure confronts the growing confidence of scholastic reason and how philosophy begins to question the very tools it has just perfected. The universities now hum with argument. Method sharpens every claim. Logic tests every assumption. Thought moves faster than ever before, producing systems that promise coherence and control. Yet beneath this precision, a new unease appears. Well, if truth can be organized through procedure, what remains of illumination, grace, and the inner transformation once at the heart of faith? Bonaventure steps into this tension not as an opponent of reason, but as its interpreter. He accepts the discipline of argument while warning against its sufficiency. The intellect, he insists, can guide the soul only so far. Beyond structure lies encounter. Beyond method lies ascent. This episode begins at the moment scholasticism faces its own success. Wonder, once reordered into method, now seeks its source again. Philosophy pauses, sensing that power gained through clarity must be balanced by humility before what cannot be mastered. The lecture hall empties, but Bonaventure remains seated, hands folded as if still listening to something others no longer hear. The arguments have been precise, distinctions drawn cleanly, objections answered according to rule. Nothing is formally wrong, yet something feels incomplete. The method moves perfectly, but the destination remains unclear. Reason has done its work. It has not brought rest. Bonaventure does not reject the scholastic system. He recognizes its strength and respects its discipline. Reason clarifies concepts, orders arguments, and protects theology from confusion. Without it, thought dissolves into unstructured devotion. Yet he insists on a boundary that many of the new schools overlook. Reason can organize the path. It cannot provide the light by which the path is seen. Illumination must come from elsewhere. For him, knowledge remains hierarchical. Sensory experience grounds understanding. Rational analysis gives it form. But above both stands illumination, an inward light through which truth is recognized rather than constructed. This light is not an addition to reasoning, it is its condition. Without it, arguments multiply without convergence. Thought accelerates while wisdom lags behind. This conviction shapes how he teaches. Logical tools are used carefully, never allowed to claim autonomy. Aristotle is studied, but not enthroned. Method serves faith, not the reverse. When reason reaches its limit, it must learn to yield. Not because it fails, but because it reveals what it cannot complete. The highest truths are not deduced, they are received. Seen from above, a tension crystallizes across the century. Scholasticism faces two opposing temptations: abandoning reason out of fear or absolutizing it out of confidence. Bonaventure resists both. Theology, he insists, remains a journey rather than a system. Illumination preserves transcendence where method risks enclosure. As evening settles and the city quiets, Bonaventure leaves without triumph. His aim is not to defeat reason, but to place it correctly. Thought must be guided by a light it cannot generate on its own. Footsteps echo softly as Bonaventure climbs toward the chapel, leaving behind the rooms where questions are sharpened and arguments weighed. He does not dismiss what happens there. Logic has its place. It clears confusion, disciplines speech, and teaches the mind how to move without stumbling. Yet, as silence draws closer, a different order becomes visible. Some forms of knowing prepare, others complete, you know. For Bonaventure, knowledge unfolds in levels rather than rivalry. Logic stands near the ground. It trains distinction, coherence, and intellectual discipline. Without it, thought dissolves into impulse or repetition. Yet logic advances by separation. It divides concepts, isolates premises, and proceeds step by step. This method is powerful, but limited. What is most unified cannot be grasped by a process built on division. Above logic stands contemplation. Here, knowing gathers rather than dissects. The mind no longer argues toward truth. It rests within it. Bonaventure treats contemplation not as emotional intensity, but as intellectual fulfillment. Reason reaches a point where further analysis fragments what should remain whole. At that threshold, assent requires stillness instead of speed. The highest truths are not solved, they are seen. This hierarchy reshapes how learning is judged. A flawless argument that fails to orient the soul remains incomplete. Mastery of method without assent produces cleverness, not wisdom. Bonaventure observes students who excel in disputation yet remain unsettled, as if precision alone cannot quiet desire. Logic sharpens the intellect, contemplation aligns it. One prepares the way, the other allows arrival. Seen from above, this offers a corrective rather than a rejection. Bonaventure does not dismantle scholasticism, he reorders it. Knowledge rises through stages, each surpassing the last without denying it. Logic remains necessary, but subordinate. Contemplation preserves unity where analysis multiplies parts. As Bonaventure enters the dim light of the chapel, words yield to attention. Thought does not cease. It alters its posture. What has been organized below is gathered above, and knowledge finds its proper height. A pile of newly copied texts lies open on the table, their margins crowded with diagrams and careful distinctions. Bonaventure studies them without hurry. Aristotle's clarity is unmistakable. Causes align, definitions hold. The system advances with a confidence that feels almost complete. And that is precisely what troubles him. A structure that explains so much so cleanly begins to suggest that nothing essential lies beyond it. Well, his suspicion does not come from ignorance, but from familiarity. Autonomous rational systems promise self-sufficiency. They tempt the mind to believe that coherence equals completeness. Bonaventure observes how easily method forgets its origin. Reason, once a servant, begins to behave like a judge. What cannot be demonstrated is set aside. What resists formalization appears secondary. Theology risks becoming an extension of natural philosophy, measured by standards that cannot reach its aim. This unease sharpens in the classroom. Students trained to trust demonstration alone grow impatient with mystery. They ask not whether something leads toward God, but whether it follows from premises. Bonaventure senses the inversion. Aristotle's tools are powerful, yet when left to rule themselves, they flatten the hierarchy of knowing. The ascent toward transcendence is replaced by horizontal expansion. Thought widens, but does not rise. He does not call for rejection. He calls for restraint. Aristotle may organize the lower realms of understanding. He cannot govern the highest. Autonomous reason mistakes its scope for sovereignty. It explains motion, causation, and form with precision, yet remains silent about illumination, grace, and final union. That silence, Bonaventure insists, is not neutral. It reshapes desire by omission. Seen from above, this resistance forms a crucial boundary. Suspicion here is not hostility toward intellect. It is a defense of transcendence against closure. Bonaventure seeks to keep theology open to what exceeds system. Reason must remain porous to a light it cannot produce. As he closes the book, he feels neither fear nor dismissal. He feels warned. A mind that forgets its dependence may become impressive, even exact. It will not become whole. Debate lingers in the corridors long after the benches are empty. Matthias hears the same question repeated in shifting tones, cautious in some voices, confident in others. Has theology discovered its perfect instrument, or invited a master that will not remain a servant? The procedures function, arguments resolve, disputes conclude. Yet an unease persists, quiet but enduring. Bonaventure recognizes this hesitation clearly. Scholasticism has given faith a language of precision, a means to defend itself publicly and teach itself systematically. It exposes error, clarifies doctrine, and disciplines the intellect. As a tool, it is invaluable. But tools reshape the hands that use them. When method becomes the measure of truth, faith risks being judged by standards that do not belong to it. What cannot be demonstrated begins to appear optional. What exceeds logic begins to seem suspect. In practice, the tension emerges in classrooms and sermons alike. Students ask whether illumination is necessary if demonstration suffices. Masters wonder whether prayer still belongs within theology. The danger is not disbelief, but displacement. Faith remains affirmed, yet subtly relocated. It becomes a conclusion rather than a source, a subject rather than an orientation. Scholasticism, intended to serve belief, begins to compete with it for authority. Bonaventure refuses this false division. To reject scholastic method would abandon clarity. To enthrone it would diminish mystery. Faith must govern reason not by silencing it, but by situating it. Theology cannot become a machine without losing its purpose. God is not the final theorem in a sequence. He is the light by which any sequence becomes intelligible. Seen from above, this is a moment of balance under strain. Scholasticism stands at a crossroads, powerful enough to dominate, disciplined enough to serve. The hesitation is not weakness, it is discernment. Whether method becomes ally or rival depends on whether it remembers its place. As evening prayer begins, Matthias leaves the corridor for the chapel. Arguments will resume tomorrow. For now, the question rests where Bonaventure insists it must remain. Not in procedure, but in orientation. By the end of this chapter, reason no longer appears as an unquestioned engine of truth. It stands exposed as powerful, necessary, and incomplete. What Bonaventure preserves is balance. Scholasticism gains discipline, but not sovereignty. Logic retains its role as organizer of thought, yet it remains subordinate to illumination. Faith continues to seek understanding without dissolving into system. Wonder, once channeled into method, is gently recalled to its source. Order is affirmed, but its limits are marked. You see, what is lost is the illusion of intellectual self-sufficiency. The dream that method alone can secure wisdom begins to fade. Thought must accept dependence on what it cannot generate. This recognition slows the scholastic machine, forcing it to question its own assumptions. Clarity remains, but confidence becomes more cautious. The mind advances, aware that assent requires more than precision. This moment marks tension rather than resolution. Medieval philosophy now knows both the strength and the danger of its tools. Reason has learned how to build systems. It has not yet fully learned how to inhabit mystery without reducing it. The search for synthesis intensifies. Faith and intellect must find a form of coexistence that neither diminishes the other nor leaves them in quiet rivalry. In the next chapter, Thomas Aquinas will attempt precisely this task. Where Bonaventure warns of limits, Aquinas will articulate harmony. Faith and reason will no longer appear as competing paths, but as complementary movements toward the same truth. The question will no longer be whether thought can reach God, but how both illumination and argument can be integrated into a single, ordered vision. If this series has sparked your interest and you wish to delve deeper into the topics discussed, I invite you to the source from which it originates. This book takes you on a journey from the 7 sages of antiquity through the modern revolution with Kant and Hegel to the contemporary philosophical dilemmas of the 20th and 21st centuries. In the book, you will find significantly more details than I could present in the film, as well as space for your own reflection at your own pace. It is this very book that forms the foundation of the entire series you are watching. If you wish to explore the history of philosophy in its full version, get it on Amazon. The link is in the description of this video.